My stepson brought his pregnant girlfriend into our home and boldly claimed that me, my husband, and his mother would raise their child while they lived freely. So I asked them to leave and later discovered the baby wasn't even his. I'm 39F, married to my husband Mark, 42M, for more than 6 years now. We each brought one child into the marriage from our earlier relationships. I'm leaving my own daughter unnamed here since she plays almost no role in what happened. This centers entirely on Mark's son, Ethan, who just turned 18. Mark and his ex-wife Laura, now 43F, split up when Ethan was only 2, so he basically grew up navigating 2 separate homes. I've been part of his world for nearly 9 years, which has given me a sort of stepmom position. Up until recently, things between us felt pretty solid and warm. I'll explain what changed soon. Ethan had been seeing his girlfriend Mia for roughly 2 years. They attend the same high school. That's where the relationship started. About a week back, Mia appeared at our door along with Ethan. He explained that her parents had thrown her out for some unspecified reason, and she literally had nowhere else to turn. Tears were streaming down her face while he pleaded that he was her only real support, so he'd brought her straight to us. Quick note, Ethan still lives here full-time. He graduated recently and hasn't settled on any next step yet. Mia is in exactly the same position. Faced with what looked like a genuine crisis, we let her stay short-term. They both seemed overjoyed, but honestly I felt uneasy from the first moment. Mark shared some of my hesitation, yet the whole scene was so desperate that turning them away felt unnecessarily harsh. I'll admit part of me was suspicious, and maybe a bit nosy about the whole arrangement. Something just felt off, you know? Like the story had holes. We'd noticed warning signs in their dynamic before. Mia comes across as quite young, but she has a strong, controlling streak and can twist situations to her advantage. I won't list every red flag, but we'd had legitimate cause for concern. Whenever we gently checked in with Ethan about whether he was truly content, he usually gave reassuring answers. Still, we quietly harbored doubts. Let me stress that those earlier worries didn't drive what happened next. I was already questioning Mia's claim that her parents suddenly evicted her. I've met them a handful of times, not close, but enough to form an impression. They never struck me as the kind of people who'd abruptly banish their own daughter. It's not an empty nest thing either. Her 24-year-old sister still lives at home without issue. The explanations kept shifting every time we asked follow-up questions. Whenever we pressed, she'd burst into sobs and Ethan would accuse us of distressing her further. We had to walk on eggshells. After roughly 7 days, the real reason finally surfaced. Mia is expecting Ethan's baby. They intend to keep the pregnancy and parent together. Because her family is deeply conservative and religious, she fled before they could react harshly. Their solution: move in with us permanently and rely on our help for practically everything. They had the nerve to lay out, calmly, that they expected Mark, me, and probably Laura to basically raise the infant while they stayed carefree and found themselves. I couldn't believe my ears. My blood was boiling. They straight up declared they were still too young to miss out on fun and too early in life to lock into careers. They had zero intention of rushing into employment just to support a child. In their vision, the 3 of us would handle the daily parenting while they held the official titles of mom and dad. Until someday, far in the future, they felt ready to step up. That was literally their blueprint. Hearing it delivered so matter-of-factly made me furious. Mark wasn't home yet, so I was alone facing them. I'm convinced they never planned to confess anything if I hadn't spotted the prenatal supplements in the bathroom and started asking pointed questions around the house. Once cornered, they admitted everything and instantly saw I wasn't celebrating or supportive. I told them flat out their thinking was immature and completely detached from reality. You don't raise humans with that attitude. Mia insisted we would naturally pitch in. I cut that off immediately. I made it crystal clear. They chose this path, so they alone carry the full responsibility. Mark and I had no interest in becoming extra parents, especially when our own lives are already stretched thin. Then Mia had the gall to suggest my teenage daughter could easily lend a hand with childcare. Can you imagine? She'd barely been under our roof a week and was already plotting to burden my 16-year-old. The argument exploded. I kept repeating that their expectations were delusional. At one stage, Ethan declared that since they'd be living here, I'd have no choice but to cave eventually. That crossed my line. I quietly informed them they had exactly 7 days to gather their belongings and secure new housing. I was done being their personal bank and full-time nanny so they could party through their 20s. Ever since, they've been hurling insults my way. Mia mostly sobs and labels me cold-hearted. Ethan unleashes long rants. I pulled him aside privately and floated options like adoption. He refused to consider it. He insisted he wanted to be a genuine dad and that I was utterly failing to stand by him. He's been accusing me of finally showing my true, wicked stepmother colors. The words sting deeply. It hurts more than I expected after all these years. Mark has been traveling for work, so he couldn't be here physically to back me up. That's left me absorbing most of Ethan's rage alone. I've kept Mark fully updated by phone, and he completely supports my stance. But Ethan is convinced I'm controlling his dad and forcing him to side against his own son. The atmosphere at home has been suffocating. With only 4 days remaining, they still haven't searched for any apartments or rooms. The passive-aggressive comments and icy silences are wearing me down. I'm second-guessing everything. Did I overreact? Could I have approached this more gently? I truly care about my stepson and only want good things for him. It tears me apart knowing he despises me right now. My heart actually aches writing this. Had their expectations been grounded and fair, I would have gladly supported them. But what they demanded is impossible. Deep down I know if we let them remain, they'd never move out and we'd end up parenting their baby exactly as planned. I'm finished with full-time child-rearing. Mark feels the same. He barely has breathing room between his demanding job and constant business trips. That's largely why I stepped into a bigger parental role for Ethan in the first place. He's fully aware that any baby left in our home would fall mostly on me. His reasoning, I'm already so good at it, so why complain? I strongly reject that logic. Raising my own 2 children doesn't sentence me to endless caregiving. Even typing this reignites my anger toward him, yet I still see him as my kid, and guilt keeps creeping in. Mark has repeatedly reassured me he's 100% with me, but his absence leaves me facing the fallout solo. It's clouding my thinking and making me question my choices. Please tell me, am I in the right here, or should I have handled things another way? Edit/clarification. A few readers seem puzzled by certain phrases, so here's more context. I referred to my stepson as an adolescent because developmentally, that stage extends into the late teens in many places, including here in the US where we live now. I relocated to the United States while dating Mark. My birth country isn't relevant, so I won't name it. Legally, we're within our rights to require him to leave. He's an adult with no lease or tenancy agreement. That said, I refuse to literally put him and a pregnant young woman on the sidewalk. That would be heartless. Offering 7 days felt like the decent middle ground, giving them time to arrange at least temporary shelter. Plenty of entry-level jobs are available locally. A friend's son landed something quickly despite no experience. The pay won't be impressive, but it's honest money. They keep insisting minimum wage roles are beneath them. That attitude is exactly why they believe depending on parents indefinitely is acceptable. A couple commenters felt we were abandoning him and should show more grace since this involves a grandchild. We never said we'd offer zero assistance. We're prepared to cover prenatal care, delivery costs, and basic baby essentials. What we won't do is provide housing, groceries, and daily childcare so they can avoid growing up. They've both ruled out college now. Ethan previously talked about higher education, but now claims he won't have time with a baby to raise. Frankly, I doubt he'd handle much of the parenting anyway. He lacks the motivation even to job hunt seriously. We're not going to watch him sabotage his future. If he's mature enough to choose parenthood, he's mature enough to support that child financially. We do understand he's very young and scared, so some guidance and limited help makes sense. We're simply refusing to reward the entitlement. Thanks so much to everyone who shared thoughtful replies. Those of you who were teen parents or raised one gave the most grounded perspective. It's tempting to shout, kick them out and let them sink, but real life is that simple. As a mom myself, I know how overwhelming parenting can feel. I can only imagine the terror when you're barely an adult with few options. Ethan acted incredibly entitled, but we still want to reach him. He's frightened underneath the bravado. Sometimes a little patience goes a long way. If he keeps rejecting reasonable support, though, our hands are tied. Mark has returned home and read many of your comments. I felt he needed to see them firsthand since he's the biological parent. Ultimately, Mark and Laura will decide the exact level of help they're comfortable giving. They spoke privately and agreed to sit Ethan down for one more serious conversation, laying everything on the table so he stops painting me as the sole bad guy. They also decided Chloe should not be present for this discussion. Both feel she exerts unhealthy influence over him and has been steering his choices. We spotted concerning patterns early on, so this isn't a sudden conclusion. Surprisingly, Laura specifically asked me to join the meeting. That floored me. Our relationship has always been polite at best. She's historically been protective about anyone else acting parental toward Ethan. Yet she recognized how long I've been in his life and said my voice matters here. She even admitted that Mark and she have been too lenient, letting me play bad cop, while Ethan funneled all his resentment my way. Having me there would demonstrate that the three of us stand together. I was honestly touched. I agreed to attend, but promised to step out if Ethan became too distressed or anyone felt my presence was unhelpful. We've already told Ethan a family discussion is coming. He immediately demanded Mia be included, but we held firm. Right now he has very little leverage. He knows cutting ties completely isn't an option if he wants any support. Mark believes the last few days have forced some reality into Ethan's head. His texts have grown shorter and far less hostile. I've caught him gazing blankly around the kitchen or living room, looking worried instead of furious. Mia barely leaves the guest room anymore. When she does, she pretends I don't exist. Ethan carries plates upstairs so she won't have to face me at meals. He spends most of his time keeping her company, but occasionally I find him lost in thought. Even my daughter Riley noticed and told me she feels sorry for him. It breaks my heart too. I'm really hoping he'll be calmer and more open during the talk. Mark and Laura are cautiously optimistic that he's starting to grasp the seriousness. We'll see what happens. I'll post another update after the conversation if anyone wants to follow along. Update 2: the family meeting took place right here at the house. It was intense, to say the least. I'll jump straight in. Ethan asked Mia to go hang out with friends so we could speak privately. She looked uneasy but eventually left. Laura arrived shortly before Mia walked out. The moment Mia spotted her, she began rubbing her stomach dramatically and sniffled loudly. Laura kept a completely neutral expression and offered only a clipped greeting. Mia seemed irritated by the lack of reaction, then left. That little performance was so transparent it almost made me laugh if the stakes weren't so high. Laura wasted no time. She launched into Ethan, demanding to know what on earth possessed him to try using all of us as free labor and cash support while dodging real responsibility. She also insisted he owed me a sincere apology for the nasty names he'd called me. To his credit, Ethan flushed with shame and actually said sorry. He admitted he'd been terrified and overwhelmed, and he'd counted on me stepping in because I always handle everything so capably, even when Mark is away. Apparently, Mia frequently pointed out how strong and nurturing I am, so when she promised that I'd figure everything out and basically raise their baby while they enjoyed life, he bought it completely. When I refused, panic took over and he lashed out at me. Mia kept reinforcing that I was selfish and punishing them for the pregnancy. I told him blaming her entirely wasn't fair. He chose to direct his anger at me too. He acknowledged that and apologized again. I accepted because I could see how scared he truly was. Forgiving him felt like the only humane choice. The three of us then painted a brutally honest picture of what raising a child actually demands. We gently raised adoption as one path, but Ethan's face fell at the idea. Mark and Laura were firm. If he insists on keeping this baby, he must find any job possible and start building savings immediately. Our financial help will cover only medical bills and perhaps occasional supervised babysitting, with strict limits and rules. Since he's demanding to be a father, he has to act like one, not just claim the title. I think the message finally landed. He even surprised us by revealing he'd quietly started browsing job listings and rental options because he knows I follow through on ultimatums. It was Mia having meltdowns and threatening to walk away with the baby, unless he could force me to agree to their original plan. That's when I asked the question that had been burning in my mind. Was he absolutely certain the baby was his? Ethan bristled at first and stammered that of course it was. Then I shared what my daughter Riley had quietly told me the previous day. She'd heard through her friend group that Mia had been involved with several other guys. Riley's friend actually witnessed Mia at her house one afternoon when the parents were gone, her older brother's house, to be specific. When that friend mentioned the pregnancy to her brother, his strange reaction raised huge red flags. Riley felt the information was serious enough to bring to me. Thank goodness she trusted me with it. When I relayed the rumor to Ethan, his defiance crumbled. He admitted he'd already suspected infidelity, but got blindsided by the pregnancy before he could end things. Mia had sworn the child was his and became furious whenever he questioned her. Mark and Laura were livid with him for ignoring the obvious warnings. Mark told him he'd raised him better than this. Laura reminded him she'd cautioned him about Mia from the beginning, yet he'd chosen to scheme ways for her to leech off the family instead. Ethan just stared at the floor while his parents unloaded. When they cooled off, I urged him to demand a paternity test before ever signing a birth certificate. He looked terrified and said Mia would explode and leave if he pushed for one. I laid out the very real risk of paternity fraud and pointed out how many suspicious behaviors she'd already shown. We also tried to show him how unhealthy her control over his decisions had become. He didn't fight that observation, but he still said he wasn't ready to walk away from her. I'm genuinely worried he's become far too entangled. This codependency doesn't look like love. It looks like a trap. Ethan promised he would speak with her and that they'd be out by the end of the week as originally stated. He said he was taking our words seriously and needed time to think before any permanent choices. He pleaded with us not to cut contact or abandon him. Hearing him beg like that shattered me. He genuinely believed we might wash our hands of him completely. We reassured him he would always have our love and support, but never again at the cost of disrespect. We repeated the paternity warning and the importance of honest conversations. The drama clearly isn't finished. I'm praying he finds the courage to get that test because the red flags are screaming. I'm also bracing for a possible meltdown from Mia when moving day arrives. Things could turn very messy. I can't promise a cheerful next update, but I'll try to post if anything significant develops. Update 3. Final, I completely forgot about this account until my daughter casually asked if I knew what Reddit was. I nearly panicked thinking she discovered the post, but she was just curious in general. If she ever does read this, hi sweetie, feel free to comment face with tears of joy. Seriously though, so much has happened since the last entry. Sorry for the long silence. Here's the conclusion for anyone still following. After that tough family talk, Ethan and Mia started clashing constantly. She kept insisting they could stay here indefinitely. He kept repeating they had to leave. I began dropping gentle reminders that I was prepared to involve law enforcement if necessary. Mia ran straight to Mark to complain. When he backed me up, she accused him of hating his own future grandchild. Mark lost his patience and snapped that there was zero proof any grandchild existed. He and Laura had already agreed. Not 1 cent or favor would be given until paternity was confirmed. Because Ethan kept stalling, his parents issued Chloe a clear ultimatum. Knowing she'd been counting on our money, the cutoff terrified her. She tried guilt trips and insults. We didn't budge. When the 7 days ended, they moved out, but not together. Without jobs, they ended up couch surfing at separate friends' places. That temporary split turned out to be exactly what Ethan needed to see how toxic the relationship truly was. He finally insisted on a non-invasive prenatal paternity test. We covered the cost. Mia agreed only because she was desperate and convinced the result would keep him tied to her. It didn't. Ethan was not the father. That revelation ended everything. She tried begging him to stay anyway. He walked away. The truth hit him like a freight train. He spiraled for a while, lots of therapy, counseling sessions, dark days. It was rough, but he's slowly climbing out. These days he's back living with us, mentally healthier, and enrolled to start college this coming fall. We have no updates on Mia and aren't seeking any. For our family, this long ordeal finally closed on a hopeful note. I'm deeply thankful it ended the way it did.